Hey, 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 what's happening, everybody? Good morning and Shabbat Shalom to you. Give me 1 second. Let me make sure I close this outer door here. Hold on 1 second. Oh, it's closed. Okay, so we'll start. And let me start by saying again, Shabbat Shalom, peace to all of you all. And thank you to everybody that's been supporting the channel, supporting the videos. Make sure that you hit like, share, and subscribe. And again, thank you to everybody that's been supporting the channel, supporting the videos, supporting the teachings, and have just been really, really, really so, giving of yourself with your donations and whatnot. I really appreciate you all. And in a very short time, I think maybe under 90 days, we'll definitely have our goal met and we'll have the Mac. So yeah, yeah, things are going good, going well, going according to plan. hmm Now let's get into our discussion because I don't want to waste any time with this. Um, this is just going to be a really notable lesson in not accepting every word from everybody about every culture that seems or may look black or ultra black at the outset. Now, I know most of you all have never considered this, but this is the truth. This is the truth. Do you all not know that many genetics of people around the world have a claim to ancient Egypt? Let me make sure I got this Bluetooth off. Hold on 1 second. Okay, we're back. We're back. We're back. I'm sorry about that. I had to make sure I turned off the Bluetooth so we get no feedback or any bad issues with audio. But again, the little known and little discussed fact that I'm about to bring out in this stream, and let me say peace to BTK Killer and peace to Miss Beverly. Good to see y'all this morning. The things that I'm about to tell you are very little known facts and very little taught facts by those that have you enamored with cultures as if they're ultra black. As with everything, to find the truth about a thing, you have to do study and research. You can't just take what another person sees as truth and accept that as your truth. The truth is that Egypt is in Africa. And for the most part, we associate Africa as a black land. But the truth is about Africa being a black land is Africa has never been a black land only. The truth about Africa is its largest and greatest portion of its population have been black, have been of a specific genetic group, but not all. And I want you to be very, very careful when someone gives you an African culture to take up and to absorb into your own cipher, that you do your proper research and that it makes sense to you, that it works with your particular worldview and ideology. If not, then you're going to get a rude awakening like many of these brothers are about to get today. Many of these brothers and sisters are about to get a rude awakening when you don't do your due diligence and you become enamored with cultures, people, and become a man worshiper. These are the type of mistakes that happen. Now, let me just say it as a statement, a broad statement, and this broad statement will actually be an accurate statement. Egypt or Kemet, upper and lower, has never been all black. I know that's a broad statement, but it's definitely an African truth. It's actually an accurate African truth that Kemet or Egypt, upper and lower, have never been ultra black. Uh-huh. If I were to say to you that I found two brothers in ancient Kemet's history that you were told and taught were black people, but their DNA in their haplogroup don't say black people. If I say the brother, hey, Blackwood X, peace to you, family. Blackwood, have you ever heard of these names? Kanum Nakat and Nakat Ankh. Have you ever heard of those names, Blackwood? Kanum Nakat and Nakat Ankh. These are two brothers, two elite brothers of the ruling class of ancient Kemet around 1800 BC. Blackwood says, no, he has never heard of them. And I want to say, because Blackwood told that truth, I'm going to take that truth and I'm going to apply it to the entirety of the community. Because Blackwood is not the only person who has never heard of Kanum Nakat or Nakat Ankh. Blackwood ain't the only one that's never heard of these people. Most of you all that are wearing ankhs around your neck, most of you all that are wearing a Ma'at symbol around your neck, or some trash from Kemet that you've hanged around your body, or some idol that you feel connected to, most of you all have never been taught whom Kanum Nakat and Nakat Ankh were in their genetics. But I want to read something for you, and I'm going to read ancient DNA results from phys.org. You can look this up yourself. This is all over the place. Blackwood says, I only heard of Kanum Hotep. Mm-hmm. Kanum Nakat and Nakat Ankh, dating from around 1800 BC. Mm-hmm. I want to share with you some very, very, very crazy stuff concerning the capture of mitochondrial and Y chromosome fractions as relates to the sequencing that these men embody. Somebody in the chat room, please find for me what haplotype M1A1 is in its actual projection. M1A1. And let's make sure we understand right off the bat, that's not E1B1A. Huh? M1A1. Someone please do us the honors. Look up what races are connected to that haplotype. M1A1. Mm-hmm. I know. I know. Let's read the article. Let's read a little bit from the article. Why not start from the top? The two brothers are the museum's oldest mummies and amongst the best known human remains in Egyptology's collection. They are the mummies of two elite men, Kanum Nakat and Nakat Ankh, dating about 1800 BC. However, ever since their discovery in 1907, there has been some debate amongst Egyptologists whether the two were actually related at all. So in 2015, ancient DNA was extracted from their teeth to solve the mystery. But how did the mystery start? The pair's joint burial site, later dubbed the Tomb of the Two Brothers, was discovered at Deir Refeh in a village 250 miles south of Cairo. Stop right here. Let me also give you something. These two brothers, the Tomb of the Two Brothers, were also considered homosexual men. Now, again, as this article relates, there's been all kinds of argument and debate over whether these two were really brothers or whether these two were not brothers or whether these two were actually lovers. There's been there's been debate over it. But make no mistake about it, these same two brothers are the two brothers that when you type in homosexuality and Kemet, these two will pop up with lips together, kiss to kiss, lips to lips, holding each other's hand, immortalized in Egyptian wall art. These two brothers. Let's continue reading. It says, how does the mystery start? The two pairs' joint burial site, later dubbed the Tomb of the Two Brothers, was discovered at Deir Refeh, a village 250 miles south of Cairo. They were found by Egyptian workmen directed by early 20th century Egyptologists, finders Petrie and Ernest Mackay. Hieroglyphic inscriptions on the coffins indicated that both men were sons of an unnamed local governor and had mothers with the same name. This is why the argument stands that they are brothers. The mother's name, I believe it is here, Kanuma. It says, it was then the men became known as the two brothers. Okay? When this particular grave complex was found and the hieroglyphic inscriptions on the coffins indicate that both men were sons of an unnamed local governor and had mothers with the same name, Kanuma. The next paragraph says, when the complete contents of the tomb were shipped to Manchester in 1908 and the mummies of both men were unwrapped, the UK's first professional female Egyptologist, Dr. Margaret Murray, her team concluded that the skeletal morphologies were quite different between the two specimens, suggesting an absence of family relationship. Very interesting. Based on contemporary inscriptional evidence, it was proposed that one of the brothers was adopted. But listen, therefore, in 2015, the DNA was extracted from the teeth and following hybridization, capture of the mitochondrial DNA or mitochondrial and Y chromosome fractions, sequenced by a next generation method. Analysis showed that both Nakhat Ankh and Kanum Nakhat belonged to the mitochondrial haplotype M1A1, suggesting a maternal relationship. The Y chromosome sequences were less complete, but showed variations between the two mummies, indicating that Nakat Ankh and Kanum Nakat had different fathers. Same mother, different fathers, and were thus very likely to have been half brothers. Thus, the finding before that they were not actually brothers and the difference between the structures and the things that were analyzed concerning their bones. Half brothers, right? Now, let's pause here and let's ask the audience this question. Is M1A1 haplotype, even suggesting it through maternal relationship, is that a black man? Are these two black men? Come on, y'all. Y'all that are lovers of Kemet, and nobody ever told you that Kemet was never ultra black or all black, even in the ruling class, and even those that are descendants of the ruling class. And how long some of these dynasties went on, it allowed us to understand that the subclass of people, which are the actual ancient Kemites, literally submitted themselves to hundreds of years in many cases of European or Turkish rule. Why am I saying that? I'm saying that because, again, you've been taught to take what you thought was the best part of Egypt and identify with it. But the best part of Egypt that you were taught was the ruling class. But I'm saying to you, the ruling class never in their genetics, in their haplogroups, in their mitochondria, almost never reflected what the ancient Kemites were, the people, the poor people. Blackwood says M1A1 shows the Turkey area. Frogbuster says M1 is from Southeast Asia. It's from the L3 branch, which is West African. Well, I'm sorry, y'all. I'm laughing because let me give you something else. Let me show you something else. Let me show you something else. Okay, watch this. Now, I want to go and I want to read some excerpts from a Washington Post article. Blackwood said that's the migration back into Africa, L3. See? There's going to be a lot that you guys are going to uncover about this particular set of brothers that really weren't brothers. Huh? Y'all are discussing it right now. Turkey, a migration, what Blackwood says, back into Africa. Even the crazy out of Africa theory comes into play here when we're dealing with these mitochondrial and certain haplotype chromosome sets. Frogbuster says Southeast Asia. Let's go to the Washington Post. The Washington Post and Johannes Krauss says, a University of Tübingen geneticist, excuse me, that's a hard word, paleogeneticist, all right, paleogeneticist and author of the study said the major finding was that for 1,300 years we see, watch this, complete genetic continuity, despite repeated conquests of Egypt by Alexander the Great, the Greeks, the Romans, Arabs, and Abyssinians. The list goes on. Ancient Egyptians showed little genetic change. In quotes, it says, the other big surprise, Krauss said, we didn't find much sub-Saharan African ancestry. Uh, what? What the fuck? This is the Washington Post. Johannes Krauss, a University of Tübingen paleogeneticist. I got the word right. I nailed it. Paleogeneticist. And an author of the study said the major finding was for that 1,300 years, we see complete genetic continuity. That's good. Despite repeated conquests of Egypt by Alexander the Great, Greeks, Romans, Arabs, and Assyrians, not Abyssinians, excuse me, Assyrians. I'm sorry about that. That was a slip of the tongue. Assyrians. And the list goes on. Ancient Egyptians showed little genetic change. But in quotes, it says, the other big surprise, Krauss said, was we didn't find much sub-Saharan African ancestry. Now, that actually is sickening. That's actually sickening. That's actually sickening. But I want to read a little more. In the last 1,500 years, Egypt became more African, if you want, Krauss says. In their paper, the researchers acknowledged that all our genetic data were obtained from a single site in Middle Egypt and may not be representative for all ancient Egypt. In the south of Egypt, the authors wrote, sub-Saharan influences may have been stronger. True. But what's the polar opposite finding? Turkish and European DNA. Let's read a little more. It was not until relatively recently in Egypt's long history that sub-Saharan genetic influences became more pronounced. Whoa. In the last 1,500 years, Egypt became more African, if you want, Krauss says. In their paper, the researchers acknowledged that all our genetic data was obtained from, again, a single site in Middle Egypt and may not be representative for all of ancient Egypt. In the south of Egypt, the authors wrote, sub-Saharan influences may have been stronger. Ancient Egyptians, in another section of this writing, in this article, it says, were closely related to the people who lived along the Eastern Mediterranean. The Eastern Mediterranean, the analysis showed that they shared a genetic material with the residents of the Turkish peninsula at that time, and Europe. Turkish peninsula and Europe. Now, stop. Let's press pause right here. How many of you all have been told this information? I would go out on the limb and reach out and say 98% of you all never considered that the two brothers that are painted as black men on the walls of Kemet are actually of Turkish descent. What was the haplogroup? What was the name of it? Somebody, in what? Come on, somebody. M1A1, Nakat, Ankh, and Kanum Nakat. Maternally related, but on the father's side, Where did daddy come from? Where did daddy come from? Mm-hmm. Blackwood say that's the migration back into Africa. L3 describes what happened. So where did they come from? They came out of Africa, went somewhere, and came back. M1A1. But Kemet is being sold to you so disrespectfully as one genetic group of people over the span of thousands and thousands of years. They got you thinking that Egypt is ultra black. But Egypt was and is just like America. Mm-hmm. Egypt was and is a potpourri. Even to today, it talks about some of the descendants of the Turkish ruling class, nice suits and queens and whatnot. It still exists in the people that live in Egypt. I said, many of these mummies and their genetic chromosome sequences still exist in the people that are in North Africa today. And you wonder why when you, and peace to you, Frogbuster, indeed. And you wonder why when you go to Egypt, nobody looks like you. Virtually nobody looks like you until you get to Ethiopia, Libya, the Sudan. Then you start to see more people that may have your phenotype. But M1A1 suggests something starkly different than what you've been taught. Stormfluence says Eurasia. And Frogbuster says the Hittites even ruled Egypt for 200 years. Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And even as relates to migrational patterns, the Hittites had the same type of proto versus neo migrational patterns that many of these early so-called Turkish or European DNAs, they had the same type of entrance and exit. I'm going to give you a principle that's present in history when you're trying to find out what a people was and what a people became. When you look at Anatolia and the actual Hittite kingdom, you'll find something very strange. That there are two kingdoms of Hittites. There is one that migrated into Anatolia in a very early date, and then the late age of Hittites, which most of us today ascribe as being Hittite. But there are two kingdoms, proto versus neo. The proto kingdom denotes that there was a migration into Anatolia, which means they came from somewhere else, which actually denotes that they are not what the rest of the people in Anatolia are. That's a very simple inference, but it's a very accurate historical perception and even brings and yields so many historical synchronisms. Uh-huh. Never let anybody tell you, oh, just African. Because to understand what African is, you have to understand all of Africa's history. Even like Blackwood says about the migration back into Africa, that a specific set of mitochondrial haplotype that we're discussing, M1A1, there is. There's a migration into and out from, into another place. These things are very important when it comes to understanding the truth about archaeology and anthropology, even cultural. We're discussing biology and physical anthropology to a great degree, dealing with these Turkish and European haplotypes, haplogroups. But honestly, cultural anthropology states the same crazy, stark, raving, nut ass facts that somebody didn't teach y'all what you need to know. Let me say this. There was a movie that came out, I think it was a year or two ago, called The Gods of Ancient Egypt, or The Gods of Egypt. And all of our black folk, all of our ultra black conscious nuts, conscious pseudos that won't delve into the depth of the ruling class separation from the genetics of the common people of ancient Kemet, all of the ultra black nutcases, they got upset because there are white people on the cover and the advertising and marketing for that movie. But what's the truth here? The truth is that white people, Greeks, Turks, Europeans of all kinds, all have a right and a claim to stake in North Africa. Why? Because of their migrations into the place, because of the race mixing when they got into the place, and then their subsequent exit and where they ended up around the world. This is a very big history story. This is not as simple as picking up an ankh and walking around and saying, I'm black and I'm proud, and so is everyone in ancient Egypt. No, don't be stupid. Don't be stupid. They told you that Nakat Ankh and Khnum Nakat were two black men. But we just found out that they're not. They're only drawn on the walls as black men. But their genetics say mitochondrial haplotype M1A1, suggesting maternal relationship between the two. But who was the pappy? It gets exponentially more sick the more you go into the study. And let me tell you this, being that we're only pointing out Nakat Ankh and Khnum Nakat and a few others, I want to give you something to look up and something to chew on. And there is a list, but I want to see if you guys can find the list before we do the next part to the series. There is a list of every pharaoh that does not have the genetics that he should have as relates to that particular geographic place. Yes, it's a lot to learn, a lot to internalize, and it's very complex. This is what the pseudo scholar banks on you not looking into. I mean, look at it. Nakat Ankh and Khnum Nakat were told to you all that they were black men and they were brothers. But when you look at them drawn on the walls in Kemet, you'll see black hair, brown face. They look like black men. Notwithstanding the fact that they're kissing and holding hands. But the DNA says haplotype M1A1 on the mother side. Ask yourself at this point, who drew them as black men and why would they do that? Also ask yourself, why did everybody teach me that these two brothers were black? Watch this. Fraudbuster says, look like Barack Obama. Looks black. But Barack Obama, and that was a beautiful point, his DNA would be flipped the exact opposite. You see, Barack's father would have genetics that is connected to me and you, but his mitochondria, his maternal side, uh-huh. Mm, mm. Well, the rule is you are what your father is. That only exists in one West culture. Uh-huh. That only exists in one West culture. That's not even a biblical principle, but those guys teach that as if that's true. Hmm. Now, y'all, if you are what your father is actually true. Nakat, Unk, and Kanum Nakat should not be M1A1. They shouldn't. I'm just saying that, as a caveat that you're going to find later if you do this study, if you delve into this particular study, these two men and even other Nisuts and queens and descendants from ancient Egypt, you're going to find this either flipped one or two ways. Mitochondrial DNA, the wrong haplogroup sequence, or you're going to find father haplotype wrong sequence for the area and for the time. The reason I'm saying for the time is because the running theme throughout the poor people in Kemet is that throughout all of these raids and conquests, that the genetics of those people had continuity. But the genetics of the ruling class, I said the genetics of the common people had continuity. But the genetics of the ruling class all over the place. M1 is the maternal, is the mtDNA, the mother's DNA. That's what I just said. I'll read it again. Both Nakat Unk and Kanum Nakat belong to the mitochondrial haplotype M1A1, suggesting a maternal relationship. We agree on that. So tell me, family, why is it that no one ever talked to us about this? Why don't Jabari talk to us about this? Why don't Shaka Amos talk to us about this stuff? And about that list that I told you I want you to bring back for the next part of this lesson. Turkish and European pharaohs. Not only conquering ancient Kemet, but being accepted by the people and accepted by Africans historically and being accepted by you today in ignorance. I tried to tell a brother one time, and this was the saddest thing I had ever heard in my life. But I tried to tell a brother one time that the Ptolemaic dynasty are not black folk. This brother argued me up and down, and this was one of the most ignorant Kemet babies I had ever seen in my life. Because he thinks the Ptolemaic dynasty are black people. You see, some people think this all is a joke. They think, nah, this can't be true. Yeah, they are Greek. They are Greeks. Real Greek. Now, for whatever reason, that poor brother was that ignorant to think that that particular dynasty were black folk and nobody taught him better. Just think, if there are people out here that ignorant, do you think they actually go to the depth of dealing with the haplogroup and the mitochondrial DNA of the pharaohs from dynasty to dynasty to dynasty to dynasty in Kemet and relating what they are in truth? I think not. Logical thinker says them pseudo teachings of Egypt are half truths and they rely on the people not researching it. Facts. They rely on the people not researching it. I just told you, Nakat Ankh and Khnum Nakat are depicted and drawn on the walls of Kemet as wall art as black people. But they're not. They're not. They're not even whole brothers. They're half brothers at best. From a family of mixed race folk, a speckled bird, they go and paint him as a black man. That is one of the most scary things to me about some of the stuff that I found in ancient Kemet. Peace box. That somebody in ancient Kemet was a goddamn liar. And most of the time, what dynasty are they from? I think 1800 BC. Look that time period up. Whatever dynasty 1800 BC would fall in, you'll find these two brothers. But I've discussed these two brothers years ago when we were dealing with Kemet on trial, and we were discussing why are these the only two depictions of black men in Kemet's history lip kissing and holding hands. And nobody ever told y'all these weren't even black men. Nobody ever told y'all that these weren't even real brothers. They come from a speckled bird kind of past. 1800 BC. Look it up. And this same parallel goes from the rooter to the tutor, from pre-dynastic Kemet all the way up to the fall of the last dynasty in Kemet. Same dynamic. The continuity in the genetics are in the people of the lower Nile Valley, but the upper class, the rulership of damn near every dynasty, you will find spotted, speckled genetics from all over the world. Just a very few of them have more than 10 actual haplogroups that can be connected to you today. You should. Are we back? I'm sorry about that. Some haters out here, they try to flag and everything, but they're never successful. So Nakat Ankh, you spell that word NakhtAnkh. And Khnum Nakat, KHNUMNAKHT. Okay? Those are the two brothers. M1A1. Jabari, you Turkish? Now listen, when we open this lesson back up on the second part, I want you guys to bring that list that I asked you to find, because I have it, and we're going to go through the list. And we're going to ask all of these Kemet teachers, why have you never told the people about this? Why are you telling us that Kemet is ultra black? But you never discuss the truth of that place, that it's just the same parallel as America, a potpourri, a mixed bag of nuts. that you're selling our ignorant people because many of them have no research skills. Let me say it one more time. Who in the hell in Egypt's history painted these men as black men on wall art, but we go and get their genetics and we find M1, A1. This is why we tell you guys that the king's lists are all thrown off and the dates are messed up. Because of liars. Now I'm starting to get a little issues here. So I guess that means it's time to end this one. Too much truth for one show. We ain't even went halfway in yet. But I'll say this to y'all, man. Guard your minds. Don't just believe any and everything people tell you and give you and sell you about no place in Africa. Do your own research. Find the truth out. Find the real history out. And Pianki says, Hotep, my brother, I see your teaching and respect as always. Excuse me. There were many foreign rulers in Kemet. The native people regained control and lose it. We're going to discuss it next time. Discuss that list. What the hell is going on? You can't stop putting on trying